Hi, Brian Ritzno here. Today I wanted to share with you the importance of taking risk in life, but wisely. A lot of people intuitively know if you want to get something, you have to put something at risk. Like, let's say, rejection, criticisms, or money or resources, at least time. And if you wanted to just feel certain, if you're afraid of, if you're timid too much, then your life will be severely limited. It's because whatever you do, and especially something new, there is always this uncertainty. And that's where you have to take some sort of leap of faith to get to the next level. A lot of people make a mistake of just taking a risk will ultimately leads to some sort of success, but that's not correct. You can take so many risks, but if you do it wrong, your life will actually get worse and worse. There is such a risk. Intuitively, a lot of people know that it's kind of stupid risks, like play a casino and try to win. So it's a stacked, odds are stacked against you. A lot of people think just taking the risk will win something. There is a slight chance. And then eventually, a lot of people, or most people, without really thinking of taking intelligent risks, eventually go bust because it's a mathematical possibility. Once in a while, there's a 1 in a million people might actually get extraordinary success by not really thinking about it. But then we cannot really bank on that type of life path. And then this is actually not really necessary to do that type of like a risk, gamble type of risk to become really successful and get where you want to be at. So the risk that you have to take have to be intelligent and wise. Intelligent means like you have to think in terms of probability and also the risk. So the probability is like you think about this, like whatever you want to do, and say, okay, this is the chance that I'm going to win probably 10-20%. If you try like 10 times, you might hit it like 10% or like once or twice. That's 10%, 20%. You want to raise that possibility as high as possible, ideally over 50%. And a lot of times to do that, you have to prepare. And then the preparation takes a lot of time, strategizing, and you got to research. I mean, there's really a different ways to do it, like in a different pursuit, but you have to really think several steps ahead. You got to probably learn certain skills like how to talk to people and having a good attitude, that type of basics. You got to learn those kind of skills. And also you have to research how your industry that you want to go into actually operates. Those things, I'm going to talk about those in a different video. However, what you want to do is to find a risk that even if you fail, it's going to be okay. That's the risk that you can tolerate. You always wanted to confine your risk in that level. So you want to take a risk. If you are staying like certainty, if you want to just be comfortable every day, then most likely or almost guaranteed that your life is not going anywhere. You don't have a motivation. If your ability is like really high, but then you're not going to be able to realize your potential. It's just because the world is full of uncertainty. No matter how smart you are, nobody can really predict the future. There is no crystal ball. All we can do is intelligently guess. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. When you're right, you wanted to get that reward. And then if you're wrong, you can still keep going. That's the essence of where you want to take your intelligence in. And then the wisdom is always you look for the asymmetric risk and the reward. What I mean by that is the risk you're going to take from the outside of you, it might be substantial. But then since you did a research, you did a preparation, and you make that risk as minimum as possible. So even if your guess is completely wrong, even the investment is the same thing. You might think, okay, this stock is gonna get sky high. What if it's wrong? Even if it's wrong, you will survive. That's the risk you have to take. And the idea that after the research, the upside is so high. So high means it's like, I would say, more than 10 times. 100 times even better. You know, if you're doing the venture, like let's say if you're spending a certain X amount of money, then if you actually do well, then your profit or something like that is 10, 100 times more. That's the risk that you want to take. And then why a lot of times the excitement or that type of things is not good. Because if you're excited, like when you're doing like, oh, this is every single day, like kind of pumped up. Generally speaking, like if you have that type of emotional up too high all the time, you will generally make a bad decision because emotions too high or too low will cloud your judgment. And also like you become very impatient. If you try to want to feel high a lot, then your strategy becomes getting the short-term reward. And then generally speaking, short-term reward, if you make your strategy around getting that high, then it's not really you're thinking of the long-term steps. And then generally the action that you're going to take is not that clever. And then the world does not quite go according to your plan. So in a short term, it's more like a noise. You know, sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. It's almost like a 50-50. And then since you're doing it a little bit recklessly or blindly, eventually you're going to lose a lot. And also like if you are too confident of your success, means it's like you are not quite aware of the unknown. The thing is, you always have to incorporate what if you're wrong. The dark part. Dark part, whenever you have the strategy, you always have to think about this. And if you don't think about it, if you always think about the rosy best case scenario, then you will take more and more risks. Generally speaking, what happens is like you start trusting the people that you shouldn't have because somebody's telling you some quick get rich scheme. You just want to believe it. Or you're going to take on more and more bigger gamble. Because like if you believe that then things going to go the best way possible, why not put all your chip in as much as possible? So a lot of times people take on the debt and they just go all in. Is that a good strategy? Only if you are young and you don't have any resources. And I'll tell you why. Because when you're young, let's say when you're teens or just out of high school or like a college, whatever the money you have, generally speaking, it's not that much like in the overall scheme of your life. That kind of money, you go all in. And if you lose it, you can recover real quickly. And that actually experience is a lot more important than just saving just a little by little and then not be able to take chance or risks. And then actually your risk is that your risk of staying in certainty. And a lot of people make a mistake that just because of small amount of money, you are not taking your ability to the next level because you're afraid of losing $100 or $500 or whatever the dollars. Like it's not a small amount of money, but then for the exponential possible reward, it's a small amount of money. It's relative to where you live, but in the United States, if that's all you have to actually risk, then go all in, because the downside is limited. But as you grow older, and then the more asset you can actually borrow, or you have a family and etc., then you have to be very careful not to do that. Just because the amount of the money gets bigger, the recovery that you can actually make is substantially lower. And actually, another issue is that if you're doing it when you are older, then it might be that you have a bad habit, that thinking habit. It means like your life has been a series of gambling. So you have to actually know yourself. If you're the type like, okay, diligently you can actually save, you can deploy your money in a very sensible manner. If you have a good habit, then by all means, take your chance when the amount of money is small. If you never have this type of the habit, means it's like you don't have that discipline. Even if you're young, and then if you say, okay, I'm gonna just spend it, take a chance, it's probably not gonna go well, because you're gonna do the same sort of behavior in a bigger way. So let's say you might hit the jackpot and you got like a 10 times return, whatever the amount that you invest. But the next venture, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna double down in the same way. So if you have such a like an impulse, generally speaking, it comes from impulse, that then you want to just do it all. You want to feel excitement. Then I really suggest take a risk, but research a lot. Just even though if you don't want to believe it, your plan or idea might go completely wrong. In that case, be survivable. So set aside some money. Don't risk what you need for what you wish to have. But taking risk is so important. Without taking risks, I think it'll be the biggest risk you're gonna have in your life if you don't do it. So I want you to take as big a risk as you can take, but do so intelligently and in a long term. Be survivable, think of asymmetry, and then just keep trying and then do over and over again. Because if you try 10 times even, if you fail 10 times, since you limited your risk so much, and then that your reward is, let's say, 100 or 1,000 times, you have still 30 more, 100 more, 200 more times you can try. You only need to hit just one time. Think about it. That's the asymmetry, like a power of asymmetry. But then you need to take a risk, and then you need to take small risks daily that you can handle. And in the things not coming out in your vision, it may take a long time, longer time than you could imagine in the beginning. You might thought that, okay, maybe it's gonna take like 3 months. It might take 6 months or a year. It might take a few years. It might take a decade. So think sensibly, but keep pushing and do so intelligently. And then your life's gonna be much better. Thank you for watching. And please subscribe and comment to share your opinion and help each other. See you next week.